Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Our Appropriations Committee members wanted the opportunity to gather here today to share their hopes and concerns for this ongoing budget process. Recently revised revenue forecasts mean that Maine will have an additional $940 million available over the next 3 years. That does not include the $14 billion in federal aid Maine has received. We believe one-time money should help all Maine citizens recover from the pandemic and address chronically underfunded needs. All Mainers should have a seat at the table, especially when we have a one-time opportunity to distribute emergency-related funds. It is my hope that Republicans will be allowed to materially participate in the budget process this time. Republicans have provided a detailed list of budget priorities with a focus on extending tax relief to all citizens impacted by the pandemic. Republicans believe one-time money should not go to create new programs or promote spending that will require future tax increases to sustain the spending after the one-time money is gone. Critically underfunded needs like broadband, roads and bridges, and our nursing homes should be included. Our top 3 priorities will provide real tax relief for Mainers seeking to recover from the pandemic and build a future. Other speakers will speak to the importance of this. If we have all truly been in this together, everyone should share in the opportunity to receive relief that we all pay for as federal taxpayers. Senator Timberlake is still currently in a meeting with the governor, so I'm going to provide his remarks for him. Republicans are concerned that money will not go towards supporting those who worked during the pandemic or towards chronically underfunded state priorities. To that end, Republicans are focused on helping all Maine citizens recover and prosper going forward, especially those who have worked nonstop during the pandemic to ensure we had access to essential services. Additional funds should go back to the people directly. The success of Maine workers and their families is what will allow Maine to recover and prosper in the months and years ahead. Republicans propose direct income tax relief, a $10,200 exemption for taxpayers that did not already receive one for unemployment income. Republicans propose to increase the homestead exemption, reimbursement to municipalities from 70% to 100%. This will ensure that homeowners receive direct relief without affecting municipal budgets. And Republicans want to increase municipal revenue sharing from 3.75% to 5%. I'll now turn it over to Senator Davis.
Thank you, Leader Dillingham. Good afternoon, everybody. And you clearly can say it's a good afternoon because it is a beautiful day today. Recently, revised revenue forecasts mean that Maine will have an additional $940 million available over the next 3 years. In addition to the billions Maine has already received, over $1 billion more in federal dollars will flow into Maine, and that's pretty close to $2 billion bucks. The important point is that Maine has a one-time opportunity to address several priority areas at once. And I can't emphasize the next statement anymore. We should all be making these decisions together. Not just the majority party, not just the one person in the governor's office, all of us, including the minority. One-time funds should benefit all of Maine people as a whole and support the people who have made sacrifices this past year for health, safety, and well-being of all of us. Unfortunately, in their haste to silence the minority, stifle debate, and prevent compromise, Democrats passed a partial budget last March instead of engaging in the traditional bipartisan process that produces a budget where everyone is included in it, not just a few. They did this by excluding Republicans from over 400 Maine towns and cities. What the people got, in my opinion, was a sloppy budget that is now in need of fixing. Just a couple of examples of the shoddy work include funding for 6 new assistant park rangers, but no funding for ballistic vests, radios, uniforms, training, and insurance for forest rangers in the same department. Another area, cutting rates to federally qualified health care centers, rural health centers, adult family care homes, and in the second year of the budget. Now with the Revenue Forecasting Commission projecting an additional $940 million in revenues to spend over the next 3 years, Republicans have clearly detailed our priorities. With the Democrats passing a baseline budget filled with gaps because of their refusal to work with anyone else. It is time to come together and pass a budget that supports the hard-working folks who got up every morning and went to work and have endured an awful lot over the last 14 months. Thank you very much, and I will turn it over to my mentor, Representative Miller.
Good afternoon and welcome to our gathering and attempt to lay out what we believe to be Republican priorities and differences with the between us and the budget that's now before us. I think both Representative Dillingham and Senator Davis have laid out the last 2 months and pointed out the fact that we are here today to deal with the proposed spending plan that would earmark every nickel of the $940 million updated in the May 1 revenue forecast. That's general fund money, and it has a corollary on the federal side that will also be an issue before us between now and the 16th of June, just 30 days away, when we have two huge budgets. The utilization of nearly $1 billion of general fund money and the earmarking and beginning the process of assigning over $1 billion of federal money. At the same time, we will finish tomorrow bond hearings that will, in the aggregate, push $1 billion worth of proposed borrowing. And if history is any predictor, there will likely be, after next Wednesday's session, hundreds of bills working their way to the appropriations table that could end up spending or asking for nearly $1 billion in and of themselves. So what we'd like to do today is distinguish between where we would utilize the general fund money differently than that proposed by the Chief Executive. Clearly, as Rita Dillingham mentioned, we'd like to use one-time money for one-time purposes. That doesn't make a lot of media hype, but it is a true statement. You can't spend one-time money twice, or even more than once. Secondly, we'd like to make short-term investments where we can that would pay long-term benefits down the road and would help to sustain a state government and a total array of services that are growing as we speak. So there are areas where we would differ. We would not bond or borrow if we can do it with current resources. We would like to invest where we can and address those shortfalls that were identified by Senator Davis and others will speak to from the short-term so-called bare bones budget adopted on March 30th. We do have agreement in certain areas, and I touched upon a few of them, and others that follow, Representatives Corey, Arata, and Fecto will speak to them individually. We agree that revenue sharing should be returned to the 5% level that the statute has held for many years up until the economic downturn in 2008 and 9. We secondly support, and you will hear others speak to this, increasing the level of funding for general purpose aid. Thirdly, we always like to put aside money for the future, and therefore we would be supportive of and perhaps even have endorsed more than the $52 million the governor is proposing to put into the Budget Stabilization Fund. We have always asked for and supported increased funds for those healthcare institutions that didn't receive much of the pandemic money that they might have needed in the course of the last 14 months, particularly hospitals, nursing homes, residential care facilities, etc. There is a short-term investment in this budget bill that does provide $15.4 million of general fund money to assist those three categories of long-term care and pandemic-related services. However, in our reading of it, it appears to be short-term and not supported by long-term commitments. We have always asked for, and the governor does in general terms, speak to improved provider rate level increases as a result of the study that has been going on for the past year. We see some of the benefit in the numbers that are in the budget that we heard about last Friday, but the bigger issue is, will they be sustained? Will they actually keep up with the cost of providing services? We like property tax relief, and we clearly support ideas like the property tax fairness credit and obviously the revenue sharing increase We would have supported and preferred to have seen the state make a commitment to reimbursing the entire cost that municipalities give up in the homestead assistance program that's administered locally. And clearly, we would have supported, and one of our members will speak to, an acknowledgement that with the tax break that we gave to those who were laid off from their work during the pandemic, there are many other people in the essential category area, particularly in the healthcare and those areas where people had to work and did, and we'd like to see some tax relief for them as well. We like the ideas of the approach to clean up the damage done by PFAS that makes farmers' lives more difficult and addresses other natural resource agencies as well. So in the end, there are areas where we can agree. There is a process where we could work together. There is a timeline, however, that really asks questions, can it be done in a bipartisan way? Think about it, 4 weeks to deal with $1 billion of federal money, nearly $1 billion of general fund money, bonds that could approach $1 billion, and an appropriations table that might also approach $1 billion. As the old saying goes, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and it sooner or later adds up to a fair amount of change. So we would differ with the governor in a lot of ways, one of them being on that notion of short-term investments for long-term savings. It doesn't feel right to be borrowing $140 million when we have $940 million that may be with us through the biennium upcoming, and parts of it may survive in the out biennium, but we are not confident that the economy will continue to reflect the benefits of $14 billion that Representative Dillingham mentioned that has come into Maine as a result of the pandemic over the last 14 months. We also think that the approach that we were given last week and had the detailed presentation on Friday layers in a lot of brand new positions, a lot of growth in government, and it is appropriate to call it a change package because it really does change the face of state government. When you talk about adding a couple hundred positions and making ongoing many of the limited period positions that were addressed in the previous supplemental and biennial, you are talking about growth in government. And the question is, will it be sustainable? So with that as a backdrop and the notion that we do want to work together, and we hope that we can, I'd like to introduce, first of all, Representative Corey, who's going to speak to the issue of sharing some of this one-time money with those who worked feverishly during the pandemic to try to keep our heads above water.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you all here today. Republicans have always recognized that Maine families have sacrificed in one way or another during the pandemic, that the straightest path to normal is to give Maine families the resources and flexibility to improve their unique circumstances and in turn help the recovering economy. When Republicans learned about the upwardly revised revenue forecast, we saw the opportunity to let Maine's families lead the way. Our income tax relief proposal exempts $10,200 for taxpayers that did not already receive an exemption for unemployment income. Many Mainers who worked through the pandemic saw income reductions, the added expenses of working from home, or simply owned businesses that chose not to apply for the CARES Act funding due to concerns about complexity and eligibility. Maine Republicans are focused on bettering the lives of every Mainer. For those who saw joblessness, we've already supported an income tax reduction in the supplemental budget that we passed earlier this year. Now we want to provide the same relief for those who worked through the pandemic, many of whom provided essential services when we were all concerned about what COVID would bring. Now that we have unexpected state revenue, let's put it back in Maine people's pockets where it is best targeted by working families to bring our economy back to life. No different from the federal stimulus checks that are designed to help bring us out of the pandemic. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Amy Arata and I'm from New Gloucester. And as a former budget committee chairman for New Gloucester, I am absolutely thrilled to tell you that Republicans want to increase municipal revenue sharing from 3.75% to 5%. Republicans pushed back on the fiscal year 2020 and 2021 budget proposal to cut revenue sharing in that biennial budget. We see revenue sharing as a valuable tool to keep down property taxes at the local level. The vast majority of Republicans supported legislation that fully funded revenue sharing on April 28th. Mainers should also receive property tax relief, and we propose to increase the homestead exemption reimbursement to municipalities from 70% to 100% in order to provide direct property tax relief directly to homeowners, because Mainers deserve direct property tax relief. And next to speak with you will be Representative Fecteau. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Justin Fecteau from Augusta. Speaking as both a Republican and former public school teacher who taught this school year, I can say without a doubt that Republicans support education funding. The administration now says it's at 55%, excluding the unfunded actuarial liability. With the UAL, we're at 59%. With all of this additional money, on top of the hundreds of millions provided directly to schools and local governments, Maine families should be holding their state and local leaders accountable for two things: no new taxes and safely reopening our schools 5 days a week. With the rolling back of social distancing requirements and mask mandates, coupled with high vaccination rates and eligible age groups, we are counting on the Department of Education and our state leaders to roll out a plan that works for all Maine families. The full list, as you've heard today, of Republican priorities includes proposals for health care and insurance, nursing home workers, veterans, economic development, public safety, the environment, natural resources, career and technical education, transportation, infrastructure, and frontline workers. It is the product of months of work of our Republican members in our 16 policy committees. Thank you very much.
Republicans will continue to support those workers that have supported all of Maine throughout the pandemic and everyone affected by COVID. Maine is on the verge of squandering an opportunity to help Maine middle class recover and put the state back on solid financial footing, all for the sake of partisan spending priorities. So far, the call for this relief is being ignored by the governor and her Democratic allies in the legislature. We hope they will change the course and ensure everyone has a seat at the table. That is what Maine citizens want from their elected leaders, and I thank you all for being here today.